Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're breaking down literally one of the most talked about topics in modern medicine: the science, the clinical applications, and the real-world lifestyle optimization of modern GLP-1 peptides. Now, whether you know them by their flashy brand names or just as that new class of blockbuster weight loss drugs, we are going to strip away all the hype today and look strictly at the physiology.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, the science of GLP. Second, the 4 key peptides. Third, managing clinical side effects. Fourth, optimizing diet and training. And finally, the future of peptides.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the science of GLP and understanding the metabolic foundation.
So, GLP-1 isn't just some crazy synthetic chemical invented out of thin air in a lab. It's actually a naturally produced hormone right in your own intestine, and it gets released immediately after you eat. Natural GLP-1 is incredibly effective, but, well, here's the catch. It is super short-lived in the body. On top of that, there is massive genetic variation from person to person. Some of us produce a ton of GLP-1 from eating just a little bit of food, while others produce barely any. And honestly, that perfectly explains why some folks are just way more prone to obesity than others.
Let's look at the play-by-play of how this actually works. You eat food. Your intestine releases GLP-1. That instantly signals your pancreas to release insulin and suppress glucagon. And then finally, your brain gets the signal that you're full, while your stomach physically slows down its emptying process. Because your natural GLP-1 vanishes so fast and varies so widely, these synthetic drugs were developed to basically copy, artificially enhance, and prolong this exact physiological cascade.
Moving on to Part 2, the 4 key peptides. Let's compare the clinical interventions.
We can see a really clear chronological evolution with these medications. We start with the older generation stuff like liraglutide, which requires daily injections and targets just that single GLP-1 pathway. Then came semaglutide, way stronger, longer acting, and only requires a weekly injection. But the real game changer? Multi-pathway targeting. Tirzepatide is a dual agonist hitting both GLP-1 and GIP. And retatrutide, which is currently in trials, acts as a triple metabolic agonist targeting GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon. Basically, we're moving from basic single-pathway injections to highly potent multi-receptor tools.
Now you might be thinking, what in the world is GIP? Adding GIP to the equation, exactly like we see in tirzepatide, allows for way better fat oxidation. Because you're hitting 2 pathways at once, you actually need less of each mechanism to get the desired effect. In the real world, this means patients can often tolerate higher overall drug doses with way fewer side effects than if they were just hammering the GLP-1 receptor alone. It's just a really fantastic synergy.
But in a clinical setting, this all requires a lot of patience. If we look at the standard dosing protocol for semaglutide, you'll see a really methodical 4-week titration schedule. You definitely don't just jump straight to the maximum dose. You start low, around 0.5 milligrams, and every 4 weeks you gently step it up, theoretically peaking at 2.4 milligrams. It's all about letting the body safely acclimate. Which brings us to Part 3, managing clinical side effects. Let's understand the risks and the adjustments. Look, it's totally a double-edged sword. On one hand, the metabolic benefits are absolutely profound. We're talking major fat loss, way better glucose control, and even completely suppressing that dopamine reward response you usually get from junk food. But on the other side of the coin, we have the reality of side effects: nausea, reflux, and constipation. And honestly, much more concerningly, the severe appetite suppression can lead to massive nutritional deficiencies and an accelerated, highly undesirable loss of your lean muscle mass if you aren't actively trying to mitigate it.
But here is the crucial takeaway. Alongside your doctor, you are completely in control. If gastric side effects become miserable, you don't have to blindly push through to that maximum dose. Staying at a lower, highly tolerated threshold, like 0.5 milligrams, very often provides excellent, super manageable results. It's really about finding the minimum effective dose for your unique biology, right? Not just racing to the top of the dosing chart.
Let's look at Part 4. Optimizing diet and training to maximize efficacy and retention. 100 grams. Lock that number in as your daily baseline. A totally non-negotiable target when you're on these medications is consuming a minimum of 100 grams of high-quality protein every single day. Look, when your calories drop drastically from the appetite suppression, protein is absolutely required to maximize your satiety and rigorously protect your body against muscle wasting. 25 grams. Equally vital is securing at least 25 grams of dietary fiber every day, paired with super heavy water intake. Remember how we said these drugs slow down your stomach emptying?
Well, if you don't eat fiber and stay heavily hydrated, that delayed emptying translates directly into severe, painful constipation. Trust me on this one, you really don't want to ignore this step.
So what should you actually be eating? Well, because high-fat meals take a really long time to digest, they can actually trigger acute nausea and reflux when you're on these drugs. So you should definitely prioritize lean meats. Choose a sirloin over a highly fatty ribeye. Opt for flaky fish like hake or cod. And for the vegans and vegetarians listening, textured vegetable protein or TVP is an absolute goldmine. It's packed with essential amino acids and fiber, and it perfectly mimics ground beef when you prepare it right.
To put it as simply as possible, you literally have to use your muscles to keep them. Committing to consistent resistance training, whether that means lifting heavy weights in the gym or just doing bodyweight calisthenics at home, is the absolute key here. It's the only way to ensure that the dramatic weight dropping on the scale is actually adipose fat rather than the tragic loss of your body's true metabolic engine, your muscle tissue.
Finally, Part 5, the future of peptides. What is next in medical optimization?
The future of this space is moving incredibly fast, and it is super exciting. The imminent arrival of daily oral synthetic GLP-1 pills, ones that actually survive your stomach acid, is going to completely change the game for people who hate needles. You just take it once a day. We are also seeing the final clinical trials of that triple agonist ritatrutide we mentioned, as well as combination therapies like CagriSema, which combines amylin and GLP-1 pathways. This is going to make medical weight management infinitely more accessible and highly targeted.
But, as always, with enhanced potency comes enhanced risk. Ritatrutide, for instance, is noted for consistently increasing an individual's baseline resting heart rate by about 8 to 10 beats per minute. Now, this isn't necessarily full-blown tachycardia, but it is a highly elevated physiological baseline that you absolutely must be aware of.
And because of that elevated cardiovascular baseline, especially with these newer, much more potent drugs, you must never combine these advanced peptides with heavy caffeine or traditional stimulant-based fat burners. Doing so can cause severe palpitations, sweating, and incredibly high anxiety. Seriously, please do not mix these powerful biological hormone signalers with central nervous system stimulants. The risk just isn't worth it.
Which really brings us to a final, pretty tough question. As these powerful tools become as easy to take as a daily multivitamin, how will you protect your metabolic foundation? Because whether you rely entirely on your own natural hormones or you utilize synthetic interventions, true longevity isn't found in a syringe or a pill. It's built on the everyday, unglamorous habits of optimal nutrition, hitting your fiber targets, and rigorous physical training. So, how will you choose to build your foundation? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this breakdown empowers you to think a bit differently about your metabolic health.